China's economy last quarter grew at the slowest rate in 3 years, reflecting a broader slump that the country's leaders signaled earlier this year when they set the slowest growth target in more than 3 decades. On Wednesday, the National Bureau of Statistics said the economy expanded 4.3% in the second quarter compared with a year earlier, down from a 5% in the first quarter and short of economists' expectations. Although China's factories are churning out chips and electric cars to supply a global boom in artificial intelligence and energy-saving products, many Chinese people are feeling squeezed at home. A long-running property crisis has no end in sight, with steep declines in construction dragging down the economy. Jobs outside of factories are hard to come by, and paychecks are not growing. Retail sales of consuming goods have been choppy. They fell in May for the first time since the end of COVID-19 lockdowns in late 2022, before recovering somewhat in June. This is in stark contrast with China's relentless strength in manufacturing and trade, with a government report released on Tuesday showing that China's exports surged 27% in June compared with a year earlier, driven by shipments of chips, batteries, and cars. China's trade surplus at more than $125 billion was its second largest on record. In other words, China's mighty export machine is masking weaknesses elsewhere. You got this AI boom, which is a global thing, and China is one of the leading nations on the frontier, said Yu Song, the chief China economist at UBS Securities. Without this, China's economy would be in a much worse state. When measured on a quarter-to-quarter basis, China's economy grew only 0.9% in the second quarter. When projected out for a year, the second quarter data implies that China's economy grew at an annual rate of 3.6%, sharply down from more than 6% in the first quarter. The second quarter annualized rate also missed the official targets. Shortcomings in China's economic growth drivers prompted the ruling Communist Party to set the lowest annual growth target in decades, with a goal between 4.5% to 5%. Stepping back to consider the trends in the first half of the year, economists say China's manufacturing and export prowess, however robust, can't carry the growth on its own. Industrial production rose 5.4% in the first 6 months of the year versus the same period last year. High-tech manufacturing rose more than 13% over that period, but fixed asset investment, which includes infrastructure, property construction, and manufacturing, fell 5.7%. Real estate development dropped 18%. The value of China's exports surged more than 20% in the first half, but consumer spending, which a Moody's Analytics report said remaining the economy's weakest link, faltered. Retail sales of consumer goods increased 1.3% over the first half of the year. The effects of the war in Iran have pinched Chinese households, with rising fuel prices prompting them to drive and fly less, when many are already worried about the economy and choosing to save more. China has softened the blow of rising fuel costs by controlling the price at the pump, but the cost of filling up for drivers is still double-digit percentages higher than a year ago. One silver lining, the economists said, was that the rising fuel prices started to feed through a broader inflation in that quarter, reversing a problem that China has been struggled to shake more than 3 years of a broader-based decline in prices. Such deflation tends to chill spending, with consumers putting off purchases in expectation that the prices will be lower in the future. China's gross domestic product deflator, a measure of prices across the economy, was negative 13 of the past 14 quarters, the most protracted slump on record, but it turned positive in the second quarter. For China's leadership, the question now is what to do next. Li Qiang, China's premier, told a group of entrepreneurs this week that officials were focusing on new drivers of consumption and securing job stabilization. It is important to take a comprehensive and objective view of the current economic situation, fully recognizing the achievements made while remaining clear-eyed for the problem, Mr. Li said, according to the state media, which ran an article about the meeting on the front page of the official People's Daily. Some economists said anticipate a discussion of fresh stimulus measures at a meeting of top policymakers this month. On Monday, officials announced a plan to target a 8.85% dollars of annual retail sales by 2030, implying a 20% rise from last year. Beijing also promised to raise wages and increase household consumption as a share of the economy. It is currently around 40%, significantly lower than the 60% share of gross domestic product for many developed countries. But analysts said these goals were not particularly ambitious, and the stubbornly reluctant consumers of China show few signs of opening their wallets further. On social media forums, shoppers share tips on how to scrimp and save, rallying around the mottos to save where you can and buy where you must. Users share on tips about shopping cart cooling off periods or leaving non-essential items in carts for 3 days before deciding to buy them. This practice is a right nod to the officially enforced cooling off period for couples seeking divorces. Others push to replace foreign cosmetic brands with cheaper local alternatives and substitute skincare product with baby lotion. Buy what is right, not what's pricey, a user on the social media network Weibo posted recently. All the while, sales have continued to fall for products as varied as cosmetics and automobiles. For categories like cars, the recent plunge has been accentuated by the end of a policy to encourage purchases. Since the devastating property crash, the Chinese policymakers have tried to replace the growth generated by the real estate sector with more robust consumer spending. They rolled out huge subsidies for households to trade in old cars, home appliances, and phones from 2024 and through last year. While it generated some activity, it failed to address the plummeting value of property where most household wealth is concentrated. Now, economists say China is in a payback period after a jump in policy-induced sales. As the economy splits between the relatively few who benefit from China's role in the global AI boom and the rest, the divide is now having a profound impact on the country's social fabric. China's property bust has caused more than 40 million people to lose their construction jobs. Many of those workers bought apartments in smaller cities, far from the pockets of AI-generated wealth, which may revive part of the property market. The AI boom doesn't benefit ordinary people in China because of this priority. The industrial focus on high-tech and semiconductors actually causes structural unemployment and underemployment, said Dan Wang, the China director at Eurasia Group, a consulting firm. What's more, Mr. Wang said, disposable income growth is now lower than the economic growth. If this continues, she noted, that means the national income is skewed in distribution towards government and companies and not consumers.